what I studied in college. I was a business and enterprise management major, and a lot of like the internships and things and the entry level positions that were available, I didn't feel like were super impactful, and so I was like sort of interested in the intersection between like business and impact. And so that's sort of like what led me to the Peace Corps and to be a said volunteer.
And I mean, it sounds like it's carried on very well, this intersection between business and impact with what you do now in corporate social responsibility. So that's awesome.
Yeah.
And could you describe to us a little bit more about your service, where you were, what your work was like, and just your experience in general?
Yeah, so like I said, I was Tico 35. I was a said volunteer, and I my site was called La Esmeralda, which was right outside of Securus, was my banking town. Um, Kind of like on the way to Torrealba from Securus. So in the Limon region, and I lived in like the pineapple fields kind of. And so there wasn't a lot of like ecotourism opportunities or anything like that. But I worked with mostly a women's group on their business. They like had a, like the catering businesses where they would like make lunch and sell it, or make bread and sell it for cafecito and stuff like that. So and then they had this property that was in shambles basically, but we got a grant to like make them a kitchen there, and I worked with Nancy from Bricks to Bread to get them an oven and stuff, and so they still use it, which is good. But yeah, so that was like my main project. And then I did some stuff at the high school in a community nearby. We didn't have a high school in my site, but I did like, employability classes and worked with the local pulperia owner on some like, just like basic like bookkeeping stuff, just things, normal said things. Yeah, so that was kind of the the bread and butter of my service. So, like the big like my big takeaway claim to fame was the women's group project. So, yeah.
Okay, that's awesome. Oh, we actually here in San Jeronimo, we just built a bricks to bread oven
Yeah,
with
that's awesome. I heard.
thermointegration. Cool.
So fun.
Yeah, that all sounds great. And then is it correct that you, after the pandemic, was it that you just went right to grad school from there?
Yeah, I mean, there was definitely a period of like figuring things out. I had actually, Zane and I had actually planned to extend um longer. Like our last choice was to go back to the States. I had response opportunities in Costa Rica or in Peru, so I really wanted to like extend my time. And then yeah, the pandemic happened and we had to pivot, and so it took us a while to figure out what we were going to do, but I ended up going to grad school right afterwards because I started looking into like development jobs and things, and the job market was, I'm sure as people know, like not very good during the pandemic. And so I took the 2 years and did the Global Human Development Program at Georgetown. And there were lots of other former Peace Corps volunteers there too, which was like nice to hear about their service and stuff. And then from there, I have been at Hershey since then. So yeah.
Awesome. And could you explain a little bit about what drew you to that master's degree? It was human development or global human development at Georgetown, and then how you used like the Peace Corps experience and like your skills to leverage or like as leverage for that application.
Yeah, so the Global Human Development Program is basically an international development degree. And So they have like lots of professors and people coming from, well, not so much anymore, but when I was there, USAID, and the World Bank and sort of just like these larger international development organizations. And that was really interesting to me because I was just coming off of Peace Corps. I thought I was going to be doing like the grassroots international development for longer before we found out that we were going to be evacuated. And so I just really wanted to like continue down that path. And then also that program has a 2 year requirement. You have to be like have had 2 years of experience in international development. So it does draw a lot of Peace Corps volunteers. Um, yeah, and it just like it seemed like the best program for what I wanted to do. And also the 2 year like requirement meant that I would be in a cohort with people who could speak on their own experience and like that weren't coming straight from undergrad. And so that's sort of what drew me to that program. I would be interested, I mean, like I could see if there's somebody who's there now who could speak some more of like what the program's like now that USAID is not really like a viable career option, and how they're sort of, I don't know, like helping students or reformulating the classes and things like that. I'm imagining that it looks a lot different now, since the cuts than when I was there.
Yeah, totally. The whole field of development is changing so much right now.
Yeah.
But yeah, that would be cool to hear from somebody who's there now. And then I wanted to hear a little bit more about your experience now at Hershey's in corporate social responsibility, and then after want to jump into a Q&A so that everyone can have a chance to ask you whatever they want.
Yeah. So in my grad program, you have to do a capstone project, and as I said, I was interested in sort of like sorry if you guys hear weird noises. There's like some mechanical stuff going on outside, so apologies for that.
No worries.
Um, and yeah, so I was interested in the intersection between business, or like the private sector, and development, especially because I was sort of seeing like the impacts of that on my Peace Corps community with the like fruit companies. Um, and so yeah, my focus was on private sector approaches to development during my master's program, and then during my capstone, I did a capstone with Pepsi, on like gender smart supply chain solutions, so like women's economic empowerment in their potato supply chain, um, which was really interesting. And that kind of like led me straight to the job that I have now, which is like human rights and social sustainability for Hershey. Um, and so I work a lot with our like cocoa procurement teams and our responsible sourcing teams on um, our salient issues. So like everything from child labor, forced labor, living wage and income, health and safety, land rights, like all of those things. Um, it's just like at a very large scale, so it's pretty hard to like see the direct impact of my work, which I think is the hardest part, especially since I started this career like working directly with the communities. But it's interesting. It's a very slow moving process, as all development work is, and just like steering a giant ship like a multinational, like billion-dollar corporation. But yeah, so I'm happy to answer any questions about my job now or any of it, but I'll just like stop there and see if anyone has any questions.
Yes, thank you. Okay, opening it up to the floor. Anything you guys got?
Hi, Maddie. This is Bella. I'm a SED volunteer also in Chico 44. I just wanted to say thank you for coming on. It means a lot for us to have a different perspective, especially now in these times. But I don't particularly have a question, but I just wanted to say thank you for being here.
No worries. Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to always connect with Peace Corps volunteers, especially Costa Rica Peace Corps volunteers, because it's a very special part of our lives.
I have a question. Um, Again, thank you so much for joining today. I'm an English education volunteer in the Central Pacific, and I was curious if you can think of a few examples of how you took like experiences that you had in as a Peace Corps volunteer and vocalized them or wrote them down for like grad school applications or when you're applying for jobs. I think a lot of us are in that part of our service, maybe. Well, people in my cohort are because I guess we're the oldest now. But I was, I don't know, sometimes I struggle with like I'll just give a specific example. I was filling out something, it was like, how would you integrate in a community? And I was like, that's all I do, but I don't know how to tell you that's all I do. So, and someone who wasn't in Peace Corps like read a draft of mine and they were like, well, I think you should do X, Y, and Z. And I was like, whoa, you like don't really get it. So I was curious if you had any like tangible advice for how to like write about it or speak about it in like a few examples that could translate to people that don't really get Peace Corps.
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, in that specific example and just like in to have tangible like bullet points and stuff, I think I talked a lot about like the Paka tools and like the 3 month period at the beginning where you're like just doing the community assessment and stuff and like identifying community needs and saying yes to invitations and just like the relationship building of it all. That's the part that I emphasized when I was asked similar questions. Like really just like what the standard process for Peace Corps is that we follow or don't follow, depending on like your style. But um, and then a big part, I think, a big thing that sets Peace Corps volunteers apart, I think, is just like the project management and M&E skills that we acquire. And so I'd just like try to highlight all of that. And then, of course, like the soft skills, like adaptability and flexibility and things like we go into these communities without knowing anyone. And I don't know, that's like a pretty, uh, it's a pretty good skill for employers to know about you, just that you can kind of like be thrown into any scenario and figure it out. And that you don't need so much like structure in order to be successful. Um, those are like more when you would get to an interview questions, but I like for the resume, I would, focus on the like more hard skills like M&E and like the community assessments and things like that.
Thank you so much. That those are great examples.
Yeah.
Hi, Maddy. I'm Owen. I'm a SED volunteer as well. I'm part of the new group, so we just swore in on October 3rd. My question to you is, so I've been here for 5 days roughly. Um, my host family's gone for pretty much the whole day, and I'm wondering if you have any advice on how I can better integrate. I mean, today I really didn't know what to do. I have a meeting at 6:30 tonight with the Audi, but during the day I really didn't know what to do, so I just walked around like the local park, and I tried to talk to people, but I think that'll be a big challenge that I'll have is just how do I get people to know who I am, what I'm doing here. So I just wondered if you have any thoughts on that.
Yeah. First of all, congratulations on swearing in. That's huge. And second, before I like give you my advice, um, I'm sure that the other like second year volunteers can attest to this, but the period you're in now is like the hardest part. And so just like be patient with yourself because it's not going to happen overnight, but it will happen. And it will feel like some days were really good and some days were really bad. And on the bad days, just like know that it will change. Um, and you'll get there. So just be patient with all of that. But on the like getting to know people part, I mean, yeah, I think walking around, I think like upaying at cafecito time and like bringing something over and just introducing yourself as like the new volunteer and getting to know, just asking people about like their families. They always like to talk about their families. They always like to talk about Costa Rica. So just asking people all of the like the cultural questions, the family questions, like trying to connect who's related to who, like that will get you very far. People will really like you for asking them all of those things. And then also, I don't know how big your site is, but if you are like, if people are playing soccer, like at the concha or anything like that, like just go play and introduce yourself. And it's very awkward, but they'll like love that you're Ticos are very like warm and open, and if you are interested in them, they are will like love you. And so I think just like being bold and I don't know, it'll happen naturally. It's a very awkward like process, but yeah, and then I'm when your host family is home, I don't know if like there are any younger people, like if you have host brothers or sisters or anything like that, but having them take you around and like introducing you to their friends too, um, is good. But yeah, I mean, just walk,
Yeah. Yeah. No, I
just
get it.
insert yourself. Yeah.
It's just
I don't
sometimes
know
I
if
feel
anyone
so
else has
guilty.
any
I'm just
other, like, I'm
sitting here
not
and
the,
there's like nothing. I'm like, I just feel like, oh, they're, ugh. I just feel like I'm wasting their resources. Peace Corps, they're like sending me here, they're paying for the, and I'm just like, just kind of walking around and like, but I know, yeah, it's a process. I can't expect to have it all on the
yeah,
first week. So,
I think in my first like couple of weeks, I spent so much time just like in my hammock reading because I did all the walking around that I could. My site was so small. I did all the walking around that I could. I had like coffee with a few people, but at the end of the day, like it wasn't enough to fill the 24 hours or whatever. So, but I ended up with this like, with a great community there. It takes a little bit of time to like get to know people and stuff. I don't know if anyone else wants to jump in on how like any techniques that they used, but because I'm certainly not the only person who's been through that.
Not a technique, but Owen, just a little story. I've been dying to do a project since I got it. I'm Tico 43, just to give perspective. I've been dying to do a project with recycling, where like 2 weeks the students collect a bunch of garbage and then we give it to a recycling center. And I like texted the number to the Addy for it here, and they weren't really helping me. And I've literally been trying to do this the whole time since I've been here. And just yesterday, I started a book club and one of the girls in the book club is like, "Yeah, I'm a part of the Girl Scouts here." And I'm like, "That's so cool. What do you do?" And she's like, "We do recycling stuff." And I'm like, "Who does the recycling?" So I just got a new contact and figured it out. So it's just everything takes time. And absolutely with the inserting yourself. And don't let them forget about you because it'll go like 2 months and they don't reach out. And then I text them and I'm like, "Hey, it's been a while. Let's hang out and have a coffee seat though. Don't mind being a little annoying when you need to, but just my
Yeah.
little story.
And also, to Abby's point too, like little clubs and things like that, like the book club, or I was very hesitant to start an English like club or class because I was a said volunteer and a lot of people thought I was just there to teach English anyway. So I like wanted to tell them what I was actually there for before I did the English thing. But if you're really antsy, like you will get people to come to you and like get to know you and stuff. And so if you any sorts of like little clubby or classes or anything like that is a good way to get your foot in the door and get to know people too. Anyone else?
Hi, Maddie. Thanks for coming on and chatting. It's really helpful to hear your perspective. I'm Rachel. I'm a YD volunteer from Tico 44. I'm just super curious about your job that you have now at Hershey's. Like, maybe you could elaborate a little bit more on what you do on the day-to-day basis. And I mean, you said that it's this huge company, right? Multinational, like across different nations and just this giant company. So do you work with a team in terms of working with this, social sustainability? What does that actually mean, social sustainability? I'm just super curious. Could you go into a little bit more detail?
Yeah, sure. So I'm on the global sustainability and ESG team. And so we have like the social sustainability side, which is just me, honestly. And then we have the environmental sustainability side, which has three people on it. And then we have like data and reporting, which is two people. And so what I do is I am kind of like, I kind of like to describe my job as like I'm sort of like an octopus with lots of arms, like over different teams in the business. So we set like the strategy side of things. So deciding like which issues to that are relevant for Hershey to look into, and then implementing and like writing the policies and things like that, and then implementing those like policies and programs with the different teams that I work very collaboratively with. And so like with our cocoa team, um, one of my favorite things we did, which I don't work a ton in now because we've handed it fully off to the Coco team, but it was the Income Accelerator project, which was like the most Peace Corps thing that I did, which was just in my first year. And that was like VSLAs and cash transfers and things like that for farmers in our cocoa supply chain. And then on the other stuff, it's like I work with our responsible sourcing team, who like audits a lot of our suppliers, and they work a lot in like the supplier capability building and making sure that suppliers are aware of like safety, or like our standards, like safety and good pay and things like that. And then we still have yet to like we there's a lot of other commodities that we haven't need to address like issues in. We don't have a lot of programming in like sugar, for example. And there's a lot of human rights risk there. And so that's something that I'm like trying to push more into. And then we have our like own living wage commitments where we're paying all of our full-time employees living wage. So I work with our compensation team on like making sure that all of our own employees are paid fairly, and things like that. And then I'm also just like constantly looking at what other companies are doing, what new legislation is out. Like the EU just put out a bunch of directives on sustainability and things, and basically just like what's going to affect the company in the sustainability world and what we should do. Like I come with recommendations on what I think we should do. Whether or not those recommendations are listened to is another story. Um, but yeah, that's kind of like what I do. We're going through another saliency assessment right now, which I'm leading, which is like I'm working with external consultants on making sure that we're still focused on the right issues and the right geographies and things like that. So looking at our like human rights strategy and just making sure like, is this still the right thing given some of the contextual changes like with the new administration and AI and things like that. So yeah, we like constantly are reevaluating it every couple of years. This will be the second time. I've been with the company for 3.5 years, and this will be the second time we're doing a saliency assessment, which kind of like defines where we're focused. If that makes sense. I don't know. I'm like very caught up in the everyday jargon of it. So let me know if something wasn't clear, but I can, yeah.
Sure. And do you guys have any spokespeople on the ground? For example, like the cacao farmers? Do you have anybody there who's like representing them, or is it all kind of this top-down from Hershey's standpoint approach? Just curious.
Yeah, so we have like boots on the ground in West Africa, where we're sourcing the majority of our cocoa. And we also like we have good relationships with the co-ops there and things. Like there's a lot of farmer co-ops in Côte d'Ivoire, for example. And so they kind of like are self-governed, and we have good working relationships with them. We also work very closely with NGOs that are have a big presence in those countries. So we've like on the program that I was explaining, the Income Accelerator, we work with CARE and Rainforest Alliance very closely on that front. But cocoa is like since there was such a huge like media spotlight on cocoa like 10 years ago, it's a lot more advanced than some of the other, like there's a lot more to lean into there as far as like NGOs and cooperatives, and a lot of companies are doing a lot of great work in cocoa. In sugar, for example, like there's a lot less of that going on. And so it's kind of hard to know where to lean in because the visibility in that supply chain is also like not good. Just like the way that it's set up with the mills and everything, it's really hard to know where things are coming from. And so those are sort of like the challenges that I'm have to think about on a daily basis.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Yeah.
Does anyone else have any questions? If not, I have one last question for you, Maddie. So what advice or just anything you've got, like, would you give to current volunteers who are interested in corporate social responsibility or translating their experience to human rights work? Um, yeah, I'm personally curious, and I think a couple other people that I've talked to here are as well.
Yeah. It's a good question. I mean, yeah, I guess like it depends on if you are interested in more on the environmental side or the social side. Luckily, there is a trend that's seeming like they're converging because, as we know, like they don't really exist apart from one another, but there are different focuses sometimes. So if you have the time and the interest, oh, hi Zane. Um, if you have the time and the interest to learn, like if you're interested in the environmental side, I would definitely, one hard skill that employers definitely look for is carbon accounting. Um, and I think there's like a bunch of classes online and things that you can do in your spare time. And then on the social side is a little trickier because I mean, I think that you can definitely use your Peace Corps experience to highlight like economic development or working with at a grassroots level and like knowing the supply chain on that side of things. Um, and then just other things like that would maybe set you apart would be researching and learning about like different reporting frameworks and things that companies use to like write their ESG reports. And yeah, just looking into I like Tasha, I can send you some resources if that's of interest. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I definitely feel lucky because I feel like my Georgetown really helped me like get there. But definitely think you can get there without that. It just might be like a little bit of a longer burn. But yeah, I can send you the resources and some of the things that would definitely help on the resume.
Amazing, thank you. And
Yeah.
thank you so much for coming on and taking the time to talk about your experience with us and what you're up to now. Yeah,
Yeah, sounds good. It was good to meet everyone. I can stay on for like 10 more minutes and listen to Zane's spiel in case anyone has any other questions. But I'll put my email in the chat, and if anyone wants to connect or ask questions, feel free to do that.
Amazing. Thank you.
Yeah.
All the applauses. And hi, Zane. Welcome.
Hey, good afternoon, I guess evening, everybody. Good to see you all. Sorry I'm a little late and it might be a little loud around me because I'm actually I'm on campus right now, but good to be here with you all. I'm assuming, should I just roll into it, Tasha?
Yes. Well, thank you so much for taking the time in between your classes to come on. I'm assuming you're quite busy, but yeah, I really appreciate it. And I'm at your old house right now. I'm at Liz and Roy's house.
Oh, amazing.
So if there's like, I'm sure you'll have
Is
to
the
run
baby
for
close?
classes.
Yeah.
I know, I was gonna say, how's the baby?
She's so sweet. She just turned 3 months. She's like paseando in Cedral right now in another town. So I miss her. But yeah.
All right, yeah, home alone then.
Um
Enjoy it.
yeah. Well, okay, so to jump right into it, I'm gonna ask you a few questions just to like give everybody some context about your service, like what you did after service, where you're at now, and then we'll jump into a Q&A.
Yeah, sounds good.
So first of all, and for everybody who doesn't know, I guess I didn't give the context, Zane volunteered at my site in San Jerónimo de Pérez de León. Um, so yeah. But could you tell everybody a little bit about your service, what you did here, what your experience was like, just to start
Yeah,
us off?
abs yeah, absolutely. Nice to meet everyone. So my name's Zane Heather. Last name's spelled like Heather, pronounced Heather. It's the boulder I push up a hill every day. I served in Peace Corps Costa Rica from 2017 to 2020 in two different roles. The first role was as a community economic development volunteer. You guys said all over the place, I'm kind of sad or dead here. So I was a said volunteer and the first said volunteer in some time in San Geronimo. As Tasha said, I did my first 2 years there. I worked very closely with the local organizations, as you guys know, the ADI, the local tourism association, as well as the women's group, and we kind of reconstituted part of the women's group. And most of my projects focused on just kind of three different streams. One of them was looking at solid waste management, so working with a local group to do essentially trash and recycle services to the town because there isn't that, and there wasn't that at least before that. Similar to I think a lot of your towns, they were just mainly burning their trash, and some people were taking it down to the center, Pedicillo, the banking town, which is great. So we contracted with the truck to come by once a week or once every 2 weeks, and then essentially had a little Centro Copio there that we'd collect trash and recycle at. So it was one big project. Another one was the creation of like the first micro hotel in the town. And I got really lucky with this one. It was just kind of happenstance at like my second day in site. Banco Nacional was meeting with my ADI to just lay out a potential project. And essentially, I got to work with my ADI to set up the proposal, pitch it to Banco Nacional, and then kind of oversee the development of the project, the building of this kind of micro hotel. Think of it as like a hostel or cabana, like 2 or 3 rooms in the center, and then try to work on the business model for that as well at the same time. So that was really interesting. That took up a lot of time in my service and was one of the big efforts that is ongoing, and was ongoing from me to the other volunteers that followed, in different ways, shapes, and form. And then the other big projects I had were essentially just projects I got funded through either Crusoe, which I know doesn't really exist anymore for Peace Corps volunteers, or other grants to do essentially infrastructure projects around the community. So we did like a fortifying of the Cancha Multiuso, and then a sports committee that was associated with that, as well as some other smaller projects around the city, around the town as well. Um, Yeah, so to Maddie's point, San Geronimo, if you have not visited, I'm sure you've heard great things from Tasha, like highly recommend. Beautiful spot, great people, awesome community. But I really came in at a really good time. There's a lot of people in the community with a lot of good ideas of things they want to do. And then just like things, I wouldn't say like fell into my lap, but the community's lap, but some of the bigger products I had kind of naturally progressed and organically began outside of essentially yeah, I wouldn't say any effort on my part. Some of it was happenstance, and some of it was just the right place, right time. So I felt very fortunate to be there. I got a lot of good stuff done in San Jeronimo. Maybe not a ton of good stuff done. I'm sure Tasha's got some perspectives on how it worked with the community and some of the sustainability of some of the projects I had. But when it comes to just the amount of opportunity I had, the amount of grants I was able to get, it was quite substantial as compared to the typical Peace Corps service. And a lot of that, some of that was based off working with the community to identify opportunities and go for them. And some of that was just like showing up in day two, Banco Nacional's there and saying, hey, we've got like $40,000 if you guys are interested in this, just put together a proposal. And it's like, well, it's kind of what I'm here to do. If you guys are interested, this sounds great. So it was great. Love San Jeronimo, great town. I've been back several times. Would love to go back again sometime soon. Really, really good connections to people there as well. Again, highly recommend. It's just so like stunningly beautiful up there, and there's so much to do in the mountains around the town. So that was my first 2 years. My last year, I worked as a response volunteer. I was one of the first, if not the first, uh, um, one of the first with another person of the first cohort of response volunteers brought back to Costa Rica. We dubbed ourselves the first responders. I worked with the Cruza Foundation, which is the Costa Rica USA Foundation for Cooperation. I'm sure you all have heard about it to some extent. There used to be a much closer tie with Cruza and Peace Corps Costa Rica when I was there. That fell away during COVID when obviously the volunteers were evacuated and they started to reallocate resources to other work streams and development streams within Costa Rica. But essentially, I was there serving under the community investments pillar of Cruza and working to essentially manage and support their Catalyst grant program, as well as their just nonprofit business support, NGO business support throughout Costa Rica. That was a fantastic position. I got, again, kind of lucky that they opened that up. Cruza is a USAID Legacy Foundation. It's this is going to sound weird, but I'm just saying it's got a big endowment. I was going to say well endowed, not the best turn of phrase. And so it's got a substantial endowment, so you don't have to go asking for money, which is one of the positives of working with the foundation, particularly in Costa Rica, where that money goes a long way. And so I got a lot of great exposure at Cruza. It was great to have that kind of national level, foundational level exposure after working in the grassroots within San Jeronimo for my first 2 years. And actually, I'm not sure if Maddy got into this, but I was actually in discussion with a fixed position with them post response. And I got my job offer through Cruza in February of 2020. And to March of 2020, the world went sideways for everybody. So, that's neither here nor there, but I was interested in potentially sticking around. It's a great foundation doing really cool things. And also, like I said, they don't have to ask for money. They've got a lot of money to work with comparatively. So really enjoyed that. I guess I'll pause here. Any questions about my service? I know that was kind of a long rambling overview of the 3 years I spent down there. All right. So after service, so like I said, March of 2020 came along, everyone's lives shifted sideways. Maddy and I were part of the global evacuation of Peace Corps volunteers. I don't know if this is already covered. Maddy and I are married. We met in Peace Corps Costa Rica. Peace Corps is great for a lot of reasons. Sometimes you find your spouse there, or find love in a hopeless place, as they say. And then so to do eventually, I started to apply kind of en masse to several graduate degree programs and then several federal opportunities. Give me a second. It says my connection's unstable. Can you all hear me still?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Okay, seeing thumbs up. So it applied en masse to several graduate opportunities, graduate schools, mostly in the international development, international relations realm, as well as public policy, and then also started applying to federal positions because that's who was hiring in February or March of 2020. Everyone else was trying to shed the workers out as much as they could. Um, that progressed well to some extent, and essentially I got into most of the schools I applied to, if not all the schools I applied to, was heavily considering that. And then 3 days before I had to make the final decision, I landed two jobs with the feds. Or both were in FEMA on different sides of FEMA. So FEMA, if you don't know, Federal Emergency Management Agency. And I had a difficult decision of either pursuing my master's education or graduate degree in some way, shape, or form, or gainful employment. And prior to that, as you all know, I was not making a ton. Although I will toot my own horn, I was at one point the highest paid Peace Corps volunteer in the world as part of the response program. A whole $1,200 a month went a long way, mostly because I was subsidizing the volunteer that was living with me, but whatever, count it. And so I decided, I hadn't really worked in the public sector outside of being a Peace Corps volunteer, if you can really count that as a public sector. I'd had internships and worked, for a year or two out of school, but nothing that really amounted to a career. And so I said, why not? I thought emergency management and FEMA was a good fit for a lot of reasons. I was doing technical assistance, which is like what you do in the Peace Corps. It's capacity building, it's working with stakeholders, and a lot of emergency management is just problem solving and creative problem solving. And so I thought a lot of the skills that I built in the Peace Corps and just my attitude and my approach to things would be a good fit there. And I was right. I really enjoyed FEMA. I really enjoyed most of FEMA. Enjoyed emergency management. I was there for about 5 years. The first year I was working in technical assistance, so working with state and local counterparts to build their capacity, predominantly around evacuations. And then once I got my foot in the door at FEMA, I got to look around and understand what it does. I didn't really know what FEMA was before that, other than all the crap you hear on the news, which isn't great and doesn't really amount to like 1 to 2% of what FEMA's mission is in aggregate. And I think that's a good reflection of what most of federal agencies look like. And I think one of the important things, if you're interested in the public sector, is getting your foot in the door because that's the hardest part. And after you do that, you can look around and it's easier to move laterally, horizontally, vertically, what have you, within the agency you're in or within the public sector at large to something that is a better fit for your skill set. So that's essentially what I did through working in FEMA and technical assistance. I identified a program that was really interesting to me that also did evacuation stuff. That was the National Hurricane Program, which was a really interesting program, interagency program between FEMA, the Army Corps of Engineers, as well as the National Hurricane Center, part of NOAA. And so I transferred over there, got the job. And then one of the nice things about federal employment is it's pretty straightforward, or it can be very straightforward how you promote. And as things open up, it's easier to throw your hat in the ring once you're there. And so essentially in 5 years, I went from not really knowing what emergency management was to running the National Hurricane Program within FEMA. And so I did that for about 2 years. I had always been thinking about grad school in the back of my mind. That was the first deviation of the path once we were evacuated. And so I'd been looking at opportunities kind of the whole time to try to balance those two things: grad school, working in FEMA, working in the public sector, or just working in general. Because once you're making money, it's tough to not make money anymore. Um, and essentially came to a nexus where I felt that I had somewhat plateaued within FEMA. I really enjoyed the mission set of emergency management and just the mission driven nature of the work, but I didn't see it as my career, my indefinite career. And I'd always been interested in pivoting after working in emergency management into essentially what is the mitigation side of the climate change equation. So, emergency management very much the tip of the spear when it comes to how we as a society deal with climate change and impacts of climate change. It is, how do you deal with the bad shit that's happening right now? It's extremely important work. It's like kind of defeating and sad work at times because the bad shit keeps happening and it's only going to keep happening more. We can get into the nuance of funding and resourcing these agencies for the mission set that is currently set out. But suffice to say, like, you're trying to do more with less, and that has been essentially the takeaway from most of my federal career, and was only multiplied. I only saw magnitudes more of that over the past 5 months as I worked in the latest administration there. So again, like I said, I've been interested in getting on the other side of the climate change equation, away from adaptation and how do we respond to what's happening and how do we adapt our society to mitigation? How do we mitigate the worst effects of climate change? And that led me, among many other things, to want to pursue education again. That leads me to where I am right now. I'm studying climate science and policy at UCSD, so University of California, San Diego, at the Scripps Institution of Oceanography, which is a atmospheric science oceanographic institution here. I'm about 2 weeks into my first quarter. We had a summer session for about 7 weeks, so pretty early on. It's a 1 year program. It's more of a professional program. And essentially, my plan is to use this to pivot into the mitigation side of the climate change equation into something that is energy transition focused. So, how do we transition, or how do we diversify our energy sector to transition away from fossil fuel dependence into a more sustainable mix that ideally mitigates the release of greenhouse gases into our atmosphere, ideally mitigating climate change? Again, very long-winded. That's what I'm doing now. It's been the past 8 months have been very interesting. I guess 10 months now, very interesting going from leading this program under the Biden administration to the Trump administration. I'd made this decision last year that I wanted to pursue education again, and I was trying to balance the two things, and essentially decided that it was better just to pivot completely and throw myself into being a student again, which was something I was looking forward to as well. And so that put me here now. Happy to field any questions about federal employment, what it was like being at FEMA for the past, so I guess I left FEMA in about June of this year to begin pursuing my education, as well as graduate school, and my thinking around that.
Amazing. That was an awesome rundown of from service to now. And then within all of that,
Long-winded.
I had time to come to San
Absolutely.
Jeronimo, of course.
Yeah, multiple
So
times. I've been back, I think, 3 times since I've left. So,
yeah, they love
mm.
it that you come back. That's awesome. And then we'll jump into the Q&A. I have a quick question before we jump in, because I feel like there's so much bleakness on the news and in all of the climate change talk right now. So I was wondering, like, what is exciting for you and in this field right now? Like, is there anything in particular that gives you hope with mitigation and with climate change?
Yeah, it's a great question because it is pretty bleak out there. I think energy is a really interesting place to attack the problem because there's a lot of good arguments around diversifying energy sources, and it's not just greenhouse gas emissions and trying to mitigate against that or reduce that, but also energy security, energy sustainability at large. Fossil fuels are not renewables. And so that means eventually they will run out or continue to get more expensive and more challenging to extract or dirtier to extract. So at the end of the day, if you're thinking about energy security, having diversifying your energy generation sources or your baseline materials that you're using to generate energy and electricity is important. So I think that at the end of the day kind of sustains what at least this side of the mitigation equation of climate change looks like. I think also being in California right now, it does feel like a special time to be here just because they are a leader in this space, not just energy generation and renewable resources, but just climate change adaptation and mitigation at large. And really are trying to be a counterbalance to the current federal posture to climate change adaptation mitigation. So the idea is that states are these little laboratories to work out policies, to try new solutions, to try innovative solutions to pressing challenges. And it seems to be a good state. It is probably the best state to be looking at that in. It doesn't come without its drawbacks. I mean, I'm in the UC system now that's getting like things lobbed at it from the current administration, which isn't great. Pretty interesting to be in this part because not that I am a glutton for pain and appreciated being on the inside when all that crap was happening, but still having somewhat of a finger on the pulse of what that looks like and talking to researchers, academics that are immediately impacted by that to me is interesting because I've been inside the federal system and it's interesting to see the ramifications kind of down the stream here. Um, Other things that give me hope, you know, at the end of the day, the mission driven mindset a lot of people in this space is, I mean, it's tried and tested over ups and downs from administrations or policies or perspectives. So it really shows kind of how fortified and how strong a lot of the people in this space are, and how foundational not just their beliefs but the way they implement those beliefs and try to work on those beliefs is. So I find a lot of motivation and inspiration from just my colleagues around me and just being in a room with a lot of people that are looking to essentially try to solve one of the most pressing challenges of our time. So, not necessarily as much inspiration from the current environments that we're trying to operate in. Again, California is nice as a counterbalance, but a lot of it comes to the people that are working in this field and are passionate about this field as well.
Amazing. Thanks so much. Okay, now, yeah, opening up the floor for any questions.
I'm also happy to drop my email in the chat. Feel free to reach out if you have any questions about any or everything. And I know trying to figure out what comes next, particularly during a scary time, is challenging. It'll be okay. You guys will figure it out. You all, you're the last 2 years of your life as you leave service is all about creative problem solving and being dropped in crazy, weird situations and scenarios, and essentially pushing through and figuring it out. And that will continue serve you well through your whole life, but also will serve you well as you transition back to whatever you're going to do afterwards, whether that's staying down there, going somewhere internationally, coming back to the States. You all have a much more robust skill set when it comes to that than the average person and the standard population, and that'll continue to serve you well. Any other questions?
Hi, Zane. We're a big group right now. We keep coming in and coming out. We're in the PSN training. I don't know if you guys had PSN back then, or I'm pretty sure you
Hmm.
did.
Yeah,
Um,
but we were in Heredia. Are you guys in Escazú?
and no, we're in San Jose, in like
Oh,
the
okay, nice.
yeah, near La Sabana.
Yeah.
Um,
Okay, lovely.
Yeah, I'm just so impressed on how you're so articulate and how you were able to explain your story so well. I'm just like super impressed by that. And I don't
Well,
know,
thank you.
did that just come with the like time in your work with the years of experience, or like what kind of advice do you have when it comes to, like, I feel like this is like kind of an interview, or
Yeah.
like public speaking in general. Like
I appreciate that. It's really nice because I always give myself like a B B minus on how I got through all that. One trick is I had like 2 shots of espresso right before this to get it pushed through the afternoon lulls. That definitely helped. I think also, through the past 3 or 4 months, I've really had to reflect on and then also communicate why I'm doing what I'm doing because, there's a lot of things that are pressing me in life to be where I am now. And I'm not sure if Maddie talked about any of that. But also I was doing, I would say just objectively pretty well in my job. Worked myself to a position that I probably didn't really have. I had no business being in at my age. I was doing really interesting work. I really enjoyed it. So I really had to make sure that I felt that this was to myself a strong decision based off of a multitude of factors, and then also communicate that to my colleagues, the people that I was applying to grad school for. Maddy, people I love, and then continue to think through that vision, that mission of what this is getting me and where do I want to pop out on the other side. So, part of it is because I've had to do several interviews like this in the past and just thinking through why am I doing what I'm doing and what's the overall goal. Part of it's still a little hazy. I think, in life, the most I ever really hope for is a direction, not a location. And I think that serves me pretty well, generally pretty well, because I don't necessarily know exactly what I'm shooting for, but I know the direction I want to go into, and that it's the faith that I'm on the other side of it. I'll find where I'm supposed to land as long as I keep doing the right things at the right time. Also, I keep trying to think through the buckets in which I want to go through stuff. So, this is the bucket of this is the decision between grad school and working. This is the bucket of federal employment. This is the bucket of what I'm doing now. So, I give myself some room to play in those buckets and try to interweave the story. But I know, like, at some point I need to pop into the other one, lest I like waste all our time talking about the crazy shit I did during COVID.
No, thank you. Because I know a lot of us are, some of us are heading out soon and COSing, looking for jobs, and we're in that
Congratulations.
space
It's
of,
exciting stuff.
yeah, he's in,
Yeah.
like the 43ers are almost heading out. So
God,
they're
I'm
kind of in
43.
that
God
space
damn,
of,
I was 33. That hurts. No,
yeah.
that congratulations. It's exciting. I think one of the things I struggled with early on is I kept reverse translating back to English from Spanish and saying weird things like really odd, like I'm gonna realize this, and like no one really talks like that. So there's not really advice here, but
I agree.
sometimes it's nice because it like I had to be more intentional when I was speaking Spanish. It's like what am I actually trying to say, and how do I get there as simple as possible? But sometimes like those cognates or false cognates really trip me up. So I guess all I can say is good luck.
Yeah.
No, thanks so much.
Yeah. Yeah,
And
best
then
of
the
luck
two shots of
and
espresso
you'll figure it
always
out.
helps.
Yeah. Oof. But yeah, I just need to remember to breathe and speak slower. I'm sorry, y'all. I have to run to another class. Is there one or two more questions I can just fire through quickly? And if not,
Just a
it's lovely to meet y'all. Go ahead.
Just a quick question. So currently where I am, I'm writing essays for the next thing I'm moving on to, and the proofreaders that I have, a lot of advice they give me is just like to push the experiences and to push like my passion for it is the big advice that they keep giving me for my writings. I'm wondering what advice you would have for me.
I think that's a good way to approach it. Again, like you all as Peace Corps volunteers, and I believe this pretty strongly, have like an adaptation, resilience, and a problem solving set that not a lot of people have, and just leaning into that both internally, knowing that you will be okay. You've gone through this crazy 2 years. You've thrown yourself in the middle of a tiny town in a foreign country, probably depending on who you're talking to, with limited Spanish ability. You talk like a 2 year old for a long time and you got shit done. Like you can do most other things just fine. Like that is the hard part. And just knowing that a lot of it comes down to your passion, your mission, and your attitude, and being able to convey that not only in the essay but once you get in front of someone, I think is important. But I think, yeah, obviously leaning into experience, leaning into skills is important, but I think the problem solving and adaptation skills should not be left out because that is something as a Peace Corps volunteer you will have in spades, and it's tough to get in the world out there, and which is kind of weird to come back and deal with undergrads or people right out of undergrad and saying, well, there's definitely, I mean, I'm not trying to toot my own horn, but there's a difference between the colleagues that I had in the Peace Corps that are out there just thriving and doing their thing versus people that have just been in certain environments and situations most of their life. Good luck.
Thank you so much. That's helpful.
Yeah.
Thank you. You too.
Yeah, thank you. We're all just figuring it out is what it is, and all you can do is what you can do, and trust that at the end of the process it'll work out. Um, okay, I put my email in there. Feel free to add me on LinkedIn. Happy to connect and talk about anything and everything. If you have additional questions as I progress through my grad school, it's a 1 year program. So as I progress through this 1 year here and what it looks like on the other side and what I think of my prospects or ways that I'm intending to enter the industry, happy to talk about that as well. But best of luck. Enjoy the rest of your time down there. It's a very special time. Visit San Geronimo if you have not yet. Sorry, Tasha, to blow up your spot.
Come visit
That's great.
me.
And yeah, like I said, just enjoy it all and good luck with everything.
Yeah. Thank you so much,
Thank
Zane.
you.
Thank
Good
Good luck.
Everybody.
class.
Yeah.